Every single person on the planet has within them the potential to be a healer. In order to make conscious contact with your inherent healing powers, you must first make the decision to be healed yourself. Reconnect to the disease-free, loving perfection from which you came is a succinct statement of what self-healing process requires. The universal mind of intention knows precisely what you need in order to optimize your health. What you must do is notice your thoughts and your behaviors, which are creating resistance and interfering with healing, which is the flow of intentional energy. Recognizing your resistance is something that's entirely up to you. That source is never focused on what's wrong, what's missing, or even what's sickly. True healing takes you back to the source. Anything short of this connection is just a temporary fix. When you clean up the connecting link to your source, attractor patterns of energy are drawn to you. If you don't believe that this is possible, then you've created resistance to your intention to heal and to be healed. If you believe that it is possible, but not for you, then you have more resistance. If you believe that you're being punished by the absence of health, that's also resistance. These inner thoughts about your ability to be healed play a dominant role in your physical experience. Becoming a healer by healing oneself involves another one of those imaginary somersaults into the inconceivable, where you land upright and balanced in your thoughts, face to face with your source. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that you and your source are one when you let go of the ego mind, which has convinced you that you're separate from the power of intention. From thoughts of sickness to intentions of wellness. The decision to create is the decision to intend. To create healing, you can't have thoughts of illness and anticipate your body falling victim to disease. Become aware of the thoughts you have that support the idea of sickness as something to be expected. Begin noticing the frequency of those thoughts. The more they occupy your mental landscape, the more resistance you're creating to realizing your intention. You know what those thoughts of resistance sound like. I can't do anything about this arthritis. It's the flu season. I feel okay now, but by the weekend it'll be in my chest and I'll have a fever. We live in a carcinogenic world. Everything is either fattening or filled with chemicals. I feel so tired all of the time. On and on and on these thoughts of resistance go. They're like huge barricades blocking the realization of your intentions. Notice the thoughts that represent a decision on your part to buy into the illness mentality of the huge profit-making drug companies and a healthcare industry that thrives on your fears. But you're the divine, remember? You're a piece of the universal mind of intention, and you don't have to think in these ways. You can opt to think that you have the ability to raise your energy level, even if all of the advertising around you points to a different conclusion. You can go within and hold an intention that says, I want to feel good. I intend to feel good. I intend to return to my source, and I refuse to allow any other thoughts of disorder or disease in. This is the beginning. You'll feel empowered by this unique experience. Then in any given moment of not feeling well, choose thoughts of healing and feeling good. In that instant, feeling good takes over, if only for a few seconds. Illness is not a punishment. You don't have a need for healing because you were bad or ignorant or as retribution for past life offenses. You've taken on whatever you're experiencing for whatever lessons you need to learn on this journey, which is being orchestrated by the all-providing intelligence that we're calling intention. In an eternal universe, you must view yourself and all others in infinite terms. Infinite terms means that you have an infinite number of opportunities to show up in a material body to co-create anything. As you view the sickness of the mind and body that permeates your own life as well as the rest of humanity, try viewing it as part of the infinite nature of our world. If starvation, pestilence, or disease are a part of the perfection of the universe, then so is your intention to end these things a part of that same perfection. Now decide to stay with that intention, first in your own life, then in the lives of others. Your intention will match up with the intention of the universe, which knows nothing of egos and separation, and all thoughts of illness as punishment and karmic paybacks will cease to exist. You can't heal anyone until you allow yourself to be healed. Connect to a loving, kind, receptive to healing energy, which is the field that intended you here. Be willing to accept the fact that you're a part of the healing energy of all of life. The same force that heals a cut on your hand and grows the new skin to repair it permanently is both in your hand and in the universe as well. You are it. It is you. There's no separation. Be conscious of staying in contact with this healing energy because it's impossible to separate from it except in your ego-diminished thoughts. By raising your energy to a vibrational match with the field of intention, you're strengthening your immune system and increasing the production of well-being enzymes in the brain. A change in personality from being spiteful, pessimistic, angry, sullen, and disagreeable to one of passion, optimism, kindness, joy, and understanding is often the key when witnessing miraculous acts of spontaneous recovery from what were called fatalistic prognostications. Don't ask to be healed, ask to be restored to that perfection from which you emanated. Let nothing interfere with the intention that you have to heal and be healed. Discard all negativity that you encounter. Refuse to let in any energy that will weaken your body or your resolve. Convey this to others as well. Remember, you're not asking your source to heal you because this assumes health is missing from your life. Come to the source as whole and complete. Banish all thoughts of illness and know that by connecting back to this source, filling yourself with it, and offering it to others, you become healing itself. It's my experience that most people live their lives in the wake by hanging on to personal histories to justify their self-defeating behaviors and the scarcity in their lives. They hang on to past pains, abuses, and shortcomings as calling cards to announce a poor me status to everyone they meet within minutes of their introduction. I was abandoned as a child. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an incest survivor. My parents were divorced and I've never gotten over it. The list could go on for hours and hours. Your past is over. By bonding to your past, you not only ensure that you'll be immobilized today, but you prevent yourself from healing. By referring to past struggles and using them as the reasons for not getting on with your life today, you're doing the equivalent of attributing to the wake the ability to drive the boat. This also works in reverse. Many people refer to the good old days that are gone forever as the reason why they can't be happy and fulfilled today. Everything has changed. No one respects anybody else like they used to. $1 used to be worth $1. Now everything is so overpriced. People don't seem to want to help out like they did in the past. When we were kids, we respected authority. Today's kids walk all over their parents. This is also living in the wake and assigning responsibility to the past for why you can't be successful or happy today. Getting out of the wake. Imagine a pencil with the ability to only write your past history. It has no use otherwise. All of your past is in that pencil. Are you going to keep it? What for? Are you going to give it up? Perhaps Omar Khayyam will inspire you with this poem written 1,000 years ago. The moving finger writes, and having writ moves on, nor all thy piety nor wit can lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out one word of it. You can cry all night about the history in that pencil, all that it contains and all you wish you could erase or bring it back again, but all of your tears can't wash out one word of the past, as the poet-philosopher reminds you. You want to let go of your personal history that's symbolized by that pencil, but when you walk away from it, no matter how far you walk, you look back and there it is. You're ready to be rid of your personal history and to move fully into the present moment, but the pencil is always there when you look back. I suggest that you pick up the pencil and with compassion, allow the words, wounds, and pains of the past to be written, embraced, examined, understood, accepted, and loved for all that you've learned and experienced. The act of picking it up and embracing it will give you the strength to transform the past into song, poem, paint, or ritual if you feel called to do those things, or to throw it away in your unique way. Embracing your personal history. In a universe that's an intelligent system with a divine creative force supporting it, there simply can be no accidents. As tough as it is to acknowledge, you had to go through what you went through in order to get to where you are today, and the evidence is that you did. Every spiritual advance that you will make in your life will very likely be preceded by some kind of a fall or seeming disaster. Those dark times, accidents, tough episodes, periods of impoverishment, illnesses, abuses, and broken dreams were all in order. They happened, so you can assume they had to, and you can't unhappen them. Embrace them from that perspective, with help if you need it, and then understand them, accept them, honor them, and finally, retire and or transform them in your own way. I know someone who gives them a new job description. Become free to immerse yourself in this moment, the now that's called the present, because it's simply that, a present to open, relish, nurture, play with, and enjoy, and explore. All you get is now. The willingness and ability to live fully in the now eludes many people. While eating your appetizer, don't be concerned with the dessert. When reading a book, notice where your thoughts are. While on vacation, be there instead of thinking about what should have been done and what has to be done when returning home. Don't let the elusive present moment get used up by thoughts that aren't in the here and now. There's an irony to this habit of having your mind drift to other times and other places. You can only drift off in the now, because now is all you ever get. So drifting off is a way of using up your present moments. You do indeed have a past, but not now. And yes, you have a future, but not now. And you can consume your now with thoughts of then and maybe, but that will keep you from the inner peace and success you could be experiencing. It's doubtful that the other creatures waste the present in thoughts of past and future. A beaver only does beaver, and he does it right in the moment. He doesn't spend his days wishing he were a young beaver again, or ruminating over the fact that his beaver siblings received more attention, or his father beaver ran off with a younger beaver when he was growing up. He's always in the now. We can learn much from God's creatures about enjoying the present moment rather than using it up consumed with guilt over the past or worry about the future. Practice living in the moment and refuse to allow any thoughts based on your past to define you. Stop and take notice of all that's in your immediate space, the people, creatures, vegetation, cloud formations, building designs, everything. Stay in the present by meditating and getting closer to the ultimate now, which is God. God is only here and now. Think about this. God will not be doing anything different 1 hour from now than God is doing right now. And God is not doing anything different now from what God was doing 1,000 years ago. The truth is that you can only come to know God if you're willing to be at peace in the present moment. You will only come to truly know God when you give up the past and the future in your mind and merge totally into the now, because God is always here now. Very few people understand and live this principle, largely because of their conditioning and unwillingness to train their minds in present moment living. That's one of the reasons why I sometimes say that it's never crowded along the extra mile. On the extra mile, choosing inner peace and attracting success into your life while living in the present moment becomes a way of being. You can begin by releasing your personal history from your repertoire of available excuses for why you're not living in peace. As you listen more closely to your sacred self and transcend your ego, so too will the world ego be shifted away from power, control, and money, back to the basic virtues of higher awareness, back to peace, beauty, love, purity, tolerance, patience, and compassion. This does not mean that the benefits of technology cannot be enjoyed. It means that the ego will not be the motivating force in our lives. What we truly are as a people is a force that craves peace and simplicity. We want that deeper awareness that comes with the sanity of the higher self. It is insane to continue believing that we are a collection of tribes, each with a separate identity and a special mission. It is insane to believe that anyone who does not fit into our particular tribal mentality is a potential enemy. We know that there is not a separate God for each of us, or even for each of our tribes. We know that there is a universal divine intelligence that flows through all of us, and in that sacred space within us, we are all one and the same. We know that the best within us is love, kindness, and compassion. Yet our egos, both individually and collectively, have campaigned long and hard to promote a false idea. How sane is it for people to be killing each other over disputes that ancient egos created long before we arrived? How sane is it for us to believe that some of us deserve to eat the food that God provides, and that others do not deserve it by virtue of their geographic location? How sane is it for us to pump up our youth with the philosophy of the free ride by leading them to believe that if they want something, they deserve it? How sane is it to show our children pictures of violence as entertainment and allow them to adopt the ego belief that it is human nature to hurt others as a way to defend a right to be special and separate? As our higher selves begin to triumph over ego in the daily decision-making of our lives, we will truly be making progress on the path of the sacred quest for all of humanity. You must banish all doubt about your ability to facilitate such a quest and begin to know that you are both the microcosm and the macrocosm. There is a universe within you, a unified field of all possibilities that you can reach as you become the compassionate witness. Be silent. Shut down the inner dialogue. Most important, transcend the false self that we call the ego. That is when the healing will begin to occur. The world ego is destined to be restrained as more individuals look within and consult the higher part of themselves. The doubts are vanishing, and the spiritual revolution is well underway. Moving toward an egoless world is not some far-fetched idea, any more than the disintegration of the Iron Curtain was a far-fetched idea. To those who heard such talk a few years before it happened, it did indeed seem absurd, but ideas, thoughts, and inner knowings are powerful instruments for the disintegration of the false self. One of the simplest and most powerful ways of doing this is taught by Eknath Eswaran. Writing in his book Meditation, he advises us to spend 30 minutes every morning in meditation repeating the prayer of St. Francis. In saying this prayer, we both transcend the ego and invite the sacred self to guide us through the day. I invite you to join me in this daily prayer as we share the path of the sacred quest. The prayer of St. Francis goes like this. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying to self that we are born to eternal life. If you have the same knowing about your world, dramatic changes will take place as we collectively put to use the greatest force in the universe, the force of love.
When enough of us as a people begin to think in certain kinds of ways and we reach a critical mass, then all the rest of us begin to align that way. And the same kind of changes that take place in the history of humanity in one place take place all over the planet at the same time. And as people begin to think this way, that the spread is not a physical property, that it's an invisible property, that indeed we are all connected, but what we're connected with is not something that we can get a hold of. As Deepak always says, quantum physics is not only stranger than you think it is, it's stranger than you can think. Because indeed, what it does is it shatters the illusion of our separateness. So that if enough of us begin to believe that something is intolerable, and we really begin to act on that and think that way and create that, because collectively the same thing is true. The state of your life is nothing more than a reflection of your state of mind, and the state of the world is nothing more than a collective state of mind. It's a state of mind. We act collectively on what we think about.
And that allowing is a great substitute for doing, and trusting, and knowing that when you align yourself in the way that I'm asking you to align yourself here today as I speak to you about meaning, when you align yourself this way and begin to trust in what Lao Tzu called your original nature, and when you understand your original nature and you return to it, basically, that's all you're ever doing, even with all of the medical practitioners that are out there. Basically, they're really trying to help you to return to your original nature, your nature of well-being. There's not a doctor on this planet that can heal anybody, and they will all tell you that the body is the hero. It is not any medicines or any surgeries or anything out there that is what's doing it. That healing is this most magical thing. It's like the wind, it's just, you can't get a hold of it, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't grasp it, and all you can do is just watch the results, watch the effects of it. You cut your hand and it bleeds, and you just watch it. And all of a sudden, things start happening inside of your body, and red blood cells head towards that direction, and white blood cells start doing this, and all kinds of things begin happening, not just there, but in your heart, and in your lymph system, and in your elimination system, and then your neurological system. It all starts working together, and it starts sending things to it, and such a scab forms, and then the scab dries up, and then there's a scar, and then things start. Nobody's done anything. What is there to do? It's part of the magic of allowing, of just getting out of the way and not trying to do too much interfering. Yeah, if there's something in there that you have to take out, you take it out gently, but You don't fill yourself with chemicals and things that the body is going to just have to process and have difficulty with as well. This is from Abraham Heschel in a wonderful book called Man is Not Alone. I loved it. He said, life is not meaningful unless it is serving an end beyond itself, unless it is of value to someone else. That you'll never find meaning through your ego. Life is not meaningful unless it is serving an end beyond itself, unless it is of value to someone else. And secondly, this is from Albert Schweitzer, everyone's hero. The one possible way of giving meaning to your existence is that of raising your natural relation to the world to a spiritual one. In other words, you have to return to spirit if you're going to find meaning. This is from Emmanuel. Our mind doesn't know the way. Our heart has already been there. And our soul never left. Welcome home. Isn't that good? Our mind doesn't know the way, our heart has already been there, and our soul never left. And this is what I wrote. Having arrived home, each breath we take is an expression of our life's purpose. We no longer struggle to win, to gain the approval of others, to meet expectations others had for us, to acquire, to achieve, to hoard, or to fulfill someone else's idea of our dharma. We let go of conflict, certainty, being right, fighting, dominating, vanquishing, and feeling superior. All of this ego stuff loses its power and attraction when we arrive home where meaning and purpose welcome us. We are home. From our home is where we began. You got to know that that's our home. That was our beginning. Ambition, all the way away from our home to take on a false self. A reverse, and all of the signs of coming back, returning home. And now we're home. And this is where meaning begins to be the dominant force in your life. It begins to be the all. And those around you or in your life and those you encounter who would try to take you away from your meaning no longer even become obstacles to you. They become, in the Tao it says, a good man is a bad man's teacher, and a bad man is a good man's job. They become your job. They no longer become someone who annoys you and finds fault with you. If they do find fault with you, you're immune to it. As Maslow used to say, learn these two things and you're self-actualized. Become independent of the good opinion of other people and detach yourself from outcome. In other words, do what you do because it is your calling. I went through a couple of quotes. One was from Valerie Hunt's book, The Infinite Mind, which is the display quote for the 6th chapter of Spiritual Solution. She said, "But I do not believe that man can perceive his godlike qualities until his field reaches higher and higher vibrations and attains a greater degree of coherency. No matter how hard we may try to receive spiritual guidance, we cannot, until our fields are attuned to that vibrational system called God. Let me share that with you again. But I do not believe that man can perceive his God-like qualities until his field reaches higher and higher vibrations and attains a greater degree of coherency. So that you can sit there in anger and in fear and in shame and all of the reactions in your life that compute to make you weak, and that will make sense shortly. And you can never come to know God according to the mind field theory that Dr. Hunt espouses and talks about, and according to a spiritual solution to every problem. Because when you're not at peace, you have sent your body into a vibrational field of energy in which you have allowed your mind to create the error or the illusion that you and God are no longer connected. And that begins to take over. And as hard as you may try, and no matter what you may do, until you can raise the frequency at which you vibrate, until you can raise the energy level at which you experience life, and move out of the lower and slower frequencies and into the higher frequencies, you will not be able to access and negotiate the presence of a spiritual solution to your problems.
You see, the intellect has trouble with this, because the intellect is the mind and the mind is the ego. If you ask most people, where is your center? Where are you centered? They will point to their head. Where do you originate from? Where is your source? Where is your ability to think and to process? They will point to their head, and they will say, it's in my brain. My brain is what makes me be able to think and be able to understand concepts and so on. If you ask a spiritual being, where is your source? Where is your center? What is it that gives you the ability to understand these great miraculous things? They will point to their heart. And so, heart consciousness is very different than head consciousness. The head consciousness is one which tries to analyze it, tries to figure it out, and has a great deal of difficulty with it because it's coming from this position of separateness. The heart is your intuition. The heart is the part of you that says, I know and I trust, and it works for me, and I don't have to convince anyone else of it. And once you have this, even prayer becomes not like, most people think of prayer as like, God is like this huge vending machine in the sky, all right? And I put in my tokens, and I behave in a certain way, and certain things are going to come to me. But there's an authentic kind of prayer that is very different than this. And this kind of prayer is one in which your prayer is in communion with God rather than separation from. I turn it over to this higher part. But it's not something that I'm ever separate from. That's trust. That kind of trust, in combination with knowing that you're no longer afraid of being God. Know ye that ye are gods. And I am in you, and you are in me, and I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. It's like this is something that we are being taught, and yet we have been conditioned almost to subscribe to another idea which says that I am not trustworthy, I am separate from, I can't do those things. That has to be transcended. You have to understand that in terms of people using it to give fear to you. And our greatest fear is the fear that we're going to be alone, that we're going to be abandoned. But this universal intelligence that is everywhere, this divine intelligence that is universal, that is in all things, how can it abandon us? Wherever we go, it's there. When you trust in that and know it without any doubt, you begin to see it everywhere. You see it in the flowers. You see it in the sunsets. You see it in your babies and in your mother-in-law. You see it in all places. And what you're doing when you see it is you're recognizing that I am worthy and I am important. and I am significant. Yes, I am connected to God. I am what God is doing. And that's the subject of the next person. Honoring your worthiness to receive. Thank you.
If you don't believe what goes around comes around, the next time you see somebody down, just smile at them. Just say hello and be friendly toward them. And you'll see that what you send out is what comes back. Now that law of the universe is so powerful that it affects every cell in your body. Every cell in your body. When you look at one cell in your body, ask yourself what makes the cell work. What makes a cell in your body work? Do you know what makes one individual little cell work? Harmony and cooperation. That's how cells work. An individual cell. If what's inside that cell, the electrons, the neutrons, and the protons, and all that physics stuff that's inside one, if any of them get out of whack and start not cooperating or not working in harmony, what happens to the cells around it? They're affected in some way, aren't they? When one individual cell is affected in a negative way, that is, when it loses its harmony, when it loses its cooperation, then it affects negatively those cells around it. And that's the disease, all right? And that spreads to another cell and to another cell. And before long, the harmony within you is, physiologically, is destroyed. There's two kinds of energy, supposedly, in every cell. One is the physics energy. Shirley MacLaine talks about this in her wonderful book, Out on a Limb. I recommend you read it. She talks about the physics of what is energy within one cell. And then that there's another kind of energy within a cell that scientists and physicists and chemists, none of us can figure out what it is, but it is what makes the whole thing work. They just call it the source. And that source, the nearest they can get to is love, or cooperation, or harmony, what we call love, which is just love. It's just cooperating and being in harmony with. All right? That's what love is. And that is what makes every single cell work. And when one doesn't work right, it affects the other cells. Now, for a minute, just for a minute, think of yourself as a cell, just as one big cell, okay? Now, one of us as a cell goes out of whack, goes amok, doesn't work right in some way. Does it affect those around us? One cell gone wrong can affect all the other cells around us. It's just a growth process, seeing bigger and bigger cells. But when you think about the entire size of our universe, which is endless, which we can't even begin to comprehend what endless means, and uncaused causes and so on, then you are as big as one of those tiny little cells inside of you. And if you go amok in some way, then you affect those around you. And if our planet, which is just another cell in billions and billions and billions of other cells, if our whole planet goes amok, that is, if we store up enough weapons and we do enough killing and we have enough hate, and as a people we do that, then we will not only affect everything down to that tiny little cell, but all the cells in our planet, in our universe, and it will go on forever. See, I have taken to sending out ICUS, a copy of my parable. I send these books out to all influential people in the world in every field. Just the last 2 weeks, I think our mailing lists have totaled over 4,000 at my own expense, just signing them and sending them out to all the government leaders, all the medical leaders, all education leaders, all people in celebrities data, all people associated with different religions and so on. I'm just sending them out. All right? Now, many times when you send things out in the mail to a large mailing list, you get some back. Karma. Understanding how our universe works. In every single obstacle that you run into in your life, there's an opportunity. Every obstacle you have is a hidden opportunity. And seeing it, rather than as something to complain about or call your lawyer about or get upset about or anything in between, you see there is an opportunity in every setback you have in life, including everything you're suffering from right now. Everything, whatever it may be. There's an opportunity in it. Look for the opportunity. Look for the fulfillment, the potential for finding out what you're made out of, rather than for finding out how well you can say, see, I told you things weren't going to work out for me. So in sending out these books, I'll get 100 back. You send out 4,000, you get 100 back. That's a good day. Okay? Only 100 came back.
Now, most people who send things out free and get some back say, well, this isn't working, I'm getting these back, I get 100 back and all that. To me, it's like, how can I find that person? That's a test. To me, that's a test from the universe to say, what are you made of? You're just going to give up and not find that person? Or are you going to go look for that person? Because that's to find out what you're made out of. And that's what I do with all of that, and have always done. And somehow just knew to do that. When it's somebody says no, it's how can I figure out a way to go around that no? Rather than I think that they're right, I'll just give up. It's always how can I get around that?
Quote from A Course in Miracles. The memory of God comes to the quiet mind. It cannot come where there is conflict. For a mind at war against itself remembers not eternal gentleness. What you remember is a part of you, for you must be as God created you. Let all this madness be undone for you, and turn in peace to the remembrance of God, still shining in your quiet mind. It's about remembering our origination. I committed this passage to memory many years ago, and I use it as a way to remember who I truly am and where I really came from, particularly when I communicate with my Creator, to stay on purpose and in spirit. Now I'd like to go through each of the messages in this observation from A Course in Miracles one by one. Number 1, the memory of God comes to the quiet mind. We came from a quiet, peaceful place. That's the very essence of creation. So when our mind is filled with noisy dialogue, we shut out the possibility of remembering our spirit. Incessant chatter keeps us attached to the physical world and produces anxiety, stress, fear, worry, and so many of the emotional reactions that are decidedly removed from God realization. We must minimize distractions when we wish to communicate with God. So being in nature, away from the artificial noises that invade our space, is helpful. But the most important thing to consider is how to keep our mind free from the dizzying, bewildering cascade of thoughts flowing through our head from morning till night, and even on into our dream state. It's been estimated that we have something like 60,000 separate thoughts every day. The real problem is that we have the same 60,000 thoughts today that we had yesterday. I've made the practice of meditation a part of my daily life because it's one way to quiet the mind so that the memory of God is accessible. So by learning to meditate, or at the very least shutting down the inner dialogue produced, directed, and acted upon by your ego, you can open up a space for remembering and returning to spirit. 2, it cannot come where there is conflict. In order for conflict to exist, there must be two opposing forces at work. That is, one force, in the form of an idea, a point of view, a desire, or a contribution, directly clashes with another. Conflict defines our lives in many ways, as we oppose our partners, our children, our bosses, our neighbors, and even our countries. In politics, it's always one party versus the other. And the entertainment industry portrays battling points of view that are usually turned into violent scenes. Essentially, conflict requires two-ness. However, remembering where we came from involves our returning to the oneness of being in spirit. After all, there are no battling powers in the divine realm of spirit. There's only perfect oneness, and this is what we want to rejoin. We want to become one again with our Creator, and we can't retrieve this memory of God with a mind in conflict in any way. 3, for a mind at war against itself remembers not eternal gentleness. The second part of this teaching from A Course in Miracles reinforces that a combative mind cannot remember where it once resided in eternal gentleness. Obviously, you can't wage war and simultaneously focus on peace and gentleness, and it is eternal gentleness that you want to remember and rejoin. It's really quite simple to do this. Just close down the battlefield and surrender. Remove all of the artillery, send the soldiers home, and replace the instruments of war in your mind with thoughts of peace, tranquility, and surrender. Making your mind a place of peace is achieved by your own will, so steadfastly refusing to have thoughts of conflict allows you to activate the glory of remembering your spirit. 4, the fourth part of this quote. What you remember is a part of you. Every memory I have is me. What a glorious feeling it is to know this. We each have the power to retrieve any piece of ourselves that we desire and to experience it right here, right now, in this present moment. The great Danish theologian Søren Kierkegaard once observed that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. In other words, if we can't go back and remember the spiritual bliss that defined us before the beginning, we've really abandoned a part of ourselves. As we move into communion with God, we must know that our inability to remember our spiritual origins is another way of really saying, quote, I'm unable to know myself because I have no recollection or memory of my spirit, unquote. In fact, the corollary of this line from A Course in Miracles that we're processing right now would be, what you don't remember is not a part of you. In other words, if we fail to remember spirit, then obviously it isn't a part of us. And 5, for you must be as God created you. As you communicate with your source of being, know that you're awakening a part of yourself that's just like God. In fact, you ought to try to approach communication with God by being as closely aligned to the way that you were created as possible. That is, by becoming a vibrational match to the all-loving Creator. Come to the quiet moments in consultation with God in love, in peace, and without judgment. As A Course in Miracles is saying, you must be as you were created. So why put on a false mask and pretend to be anything or anyone else? In this way, you can open the channel of communication because you finally remembered to be the way you were created. And that's the key to effective prayer. And as Gandhi once said, prayer is not an old woman's idle amusement. Properly understood and applied, it's the most potent instrument of action. And 6, let all this madness be undone for you, and turn in peace to the remembrance of God still shining in your quiet mind. Let's take the 3 suggestions in this teaching one at a time. First, A Course says, let this madness be undone. The madness here is that of living in a state of conflict. In other words, we must make an attempt to transcend the dichotomies of our life because the division creates so much suffering and keeps us from living an inspired life. I remember a Ram Dass lecture in which he said, I firmly come to the conclusion that there are no thems for me anymore. I can't be told who to hate, who to fight, who to subdue. I only see an us in my heart. All those messages to divvy up our world are insane. All our self-centeredness just drives our ego's insatiable appetite for making us special and putting other people down. The Course encourages us to be done with this madness once and for all, both in our minds and in our actions. And second, we're told to turn in peace to the remembrance of God. Once again, we know in our heart that we came from a place of peace. So any discord can't be the result of our Creator's actions. God cannot come to us when we pray from non-peace, so the solution is to return to the remembrance of Him and ask to be made an instrument of His peace. When I find myself out of sorts, I remember. And what I remember is to turn to peace right now in prayer. I become peace rather than anguish, and I feel the calmness I long for come over me like a wave of pleasurable relief. The greatest understanding you can have is that you don't understand. And spending your life and your energy and your relationships on trying to always be understood and have someone else agree with you and understand you is one sure way to make sure that you're going to be a victim for the duration of that relationship. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to allow yourself to be in a position where someone else is demanding to be understood by you. There's some things that are very simple, some very simple little clues that I use in my own life and in pulling your own strings that I'd like to share here with you. Under the heading of being quietly effective and knowing you're never going to be understood. First is that shrugging is a virtue. If you could just learn the art of the shrug. I like Ayn Rand's title, Atlas Shrugged. Atlas holding up the whole world and just shrugs. And the whole idea of not having to be in a position to defend yourself or to be understood, or somebody's demanding something from you, and where you could just sort of shrug your shoulders and say, well, I don't understand. I just don't understand, and that's okay. My wife and I do this to each other all the time. I mean, she does the craziest things in the world, and vice versa. I mean, she thinks what I do is crazy too. I mean, she believes in what she's doing and believes that that's the way a house has to be run, for example. She makes the beds first thing in the morning. I mean, that to her is just her way. I have lived under the philosophy that it's not any healthier psychologically to get into a made bed than it is to get into an unmade bed. But she makes the bed. I don't understand somebody getting out of bed in the morning and making the bed, but I don't have to understand. It's not necessary for me to understand. I don't have to get into a you're wrong and I'm right attitude toward it. It's just a simple shrug. If you want to make the bed, that's terrific. I'll even help you if you want to. Just let it go. You don't have to. I don't have to understand that. And you know something? Life is full of those little things. Everywhere you go, you're going to encounter people who do things their own way. And that's really what makes the world go round, that uniqueness, that specialness in people. So if you just shrug at it and stop telling yourself that I have to be right and I have to make somebody else wrong in all of my interactions with them, just shrug. Just shrug, quietly shrug your shoulders and say, they have a right. They're on their own path. They have a right to do what they want to do. And you don't have to be understood. And when you get into that mindset of not needing to be understood all the time, then you're not going to be explaining yourself and having somebody else explain themselves to you over and over again endlessly. Being offended is a choice to be a victim. Did you ever think how silly it is to go around being offended? There are people who turn on the radio and they hear somebody speaking in a certain tone or saying a word that they don't like, and they have a whole vocabulary of words that they're offended by. And if somebody says one of them, right away they go off into a dither. Well, it's just like letting somebody else's behavior decide how you're going to be emotionally. I mean, you can be the kind of person who goes down the street and your emotions are being pulled by everybody else, your strings are being yanked by everybody else in the street, depending on what words they choose, what symbols come out of their mouth. This person says hell, that one says damn, this one says uh-oh, this one says caca, that one says poo-poo, this one says wee-wee, whatever it may be, and you're offended, or whatever synonyms you want to use for all of those functions. For what? It's like allowing yourself the right to process somebody else's behavior for what it is. It's their behavior. It's not yours. If you don't like what somebody is saying on the radio, tune the dial someplace else. If you don't like the way somebody else is dressing, turn your eyes someplace else. Don't feast your eyes on it. If someone else wants to hear rock music that you think is disgusting, then don't listen to it. That's what this whole thing is about. That's what the First Amendment to the Constitution is about. That's what free speech is about. That's what free expression of as a human being is about. That there's no code that is going to fit everyone. And choosing not to be offended is to choose not to be a victim. People speak the way they speak. I don't like some of the language that I see in the films. I don't let my children go and see some of the film. I don't like the violence that is on the screen. Rather than being offended by it and being all upset about it and getting myself worked up and being a victim to the people who choose to display violence on the screens, I simply don't go to those movies. I don't have anything to do with them. And I don't miss them, and I happen to believe that it's part of the gratuitous violence that we find throughout the culture. But I'm doing what I can to eliminate that. But being offended by it, being upset by it, it's as silly as being offended by starvation. Starvation is a part of what the universe is about. And so is my desire to change it and to improve it. That's just as important. And that's what I go with. I go with what I'm for rather than what I'm against. Everything that you're against weakens you. Everything that you're for empowers you. So the question is, do you want to be empowered or do you want to be weakened? Everything you fight, you'll be weaker for the effort. Everything that you're for will empower you. When they asked Mother Teresa if she would march against the war in Vietnam in 1967, she said, no, I won't. She said, but if you have a march for peace, I'll be there.
What being open to everything means. Everything means just what it says. No exceptions. When someone suggests something to you that conflicts with your conditioning, rather than responding with, that's ridiculous, we all know that's impossible, say instead, I've never considered that before. I'll think about it. Open yourself up to the spiritual ideas of all people and listen with an open mind to crazy schemes and ideas that at first seem to be outrageous. If someone suggests that crystals can cure hemorrhoids, that natural herbs can lower cholesterol, that people will eventually be able to breathe underwater, or that levitation is possible, listen and be curious. Let go of your attachments to what you've been trained to believe. Open your mind to all possibilities, because whether you believe something is possible or impossible, either way, you'll be right. How can that be true? Your agreement with reality and all that's possible determines what you'll become. If you're convinced that you can't become wealthy and famous or artistic or a professional athlete, a great singer, or whatever, you will act upon that inner conviction that prevents you from manifesting what you'd really like. All that you'll get from your effort is being right. When you need to be right, you're attached to your conditioned reflex of the way things are and always have been, and you assume they always will be.
Releasing your attachments. Your attachments are the source of all your problems. The need to be right, to possess someone or something, to win at all costs, to be viewed by others as superior. These are all attachments. The open mind resists these attachments and consequently experiences inner peace and success. To release attachments, you have to make a shift in how you view yourself. If your primary identification is with your body and your possessions, your ego is the dominant force in your life. If you can tame your ego sufficiently, you'll call upon your spirit to be the guiding force in your life. As a spiritual being, you can observe your body and be a compassionate witness to your existence. Your spiritual aspect sees the folly of attachments because your spiritual self is an infinite soul. Nothing can make you happy or successful. These are inner constructs that you bring to your world rather than what you receive from it. If you think peaceful thoughts, you'll feel peaceful emotions, and that's what you'll bring to every life situation. If you're attached to being right or absolutely need something in order to be at peace or to be successful, you'll live a life of striving, yet never arriving. It's possible to have a burning desire yet not have attachments. You can have an inner vision of what you intend to manifest and still detach yourself from the outcome. How? Consider this observation in A Course in Miracles. Infinite patience produces immediate results. It sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? Infinite patience implies an absolute certainty that what you'd like to manifest will indeed show up in a perfect order and exactly on time. The immediate result you receive from this inner knowing is a sense of peace. When you detach from the outcome, you're at peace, and you'll ultimately see the fruits of your convictions. Suppose you had a choice between two magic wands. With wand A, you can have any physical thing you desire by simply waving it. With wand B, you can have a sense of peace for the rest of your life, regardless of what circumstances arise. Which one would you pick? A guarantee of stuff or inner peace for the remainder of your life? If you opt for peace, then you already have wand B. Simply have a mind that is open to everything but attached to nothing. Let it all come and go as it will. Enjoy it all, but never make your happiness or success dependent on an attachment to anything, any place, and particularly any person. In all of your relationships, if you can love someone enough to allow them to be exactly what they choose to be, without any expectations or attachments from you, you'll know true peace in your lifetime. True love means you love a person for what they are, not for what you think they should be. This is an open mind and an absence of attachment. In essence, I'm urging you to stop taking your life so personally. You can end any and all suffering by reminding yourself that nothing in the universe is personal. Of course, you've been taught to take life very personally, but this is an illusion. Tame your ego and absolutely free yourself from ever taking anything personally. Keep these thoughts in mind, particularly when you feel lost or unsure of your purpose. My purpose is about giving. I'll direct my thoughts off of me and spend the next few hours looking for a way to be of service to anyone or any creature on our endangered planet. This will bring you back to a realization that it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're able to give. In order to fully give and be of service and ultimately feel purposeful, you must be able to say yes when you ask yourself, do I really possess what it is that I wish to give away?